I have to tee off on the NBA and the hypocrisy that is legion right now all over this league. And I got to tell you, this kind of blew my mind, to be honest, even for the NBA, which is absolutely and insanely hypocritical. Even for the NBA, I was blown away by how exactly hypocritical this actually was. The NBA, so let me kind of walk you through a process here, right? The NBA wants to rip its players, its coaches, its commissioner. They want to tear down America as aggressively as they possibly can and all of American institutions. That's basically what the NBA has become. They don't realize it, but they are one of the primary avenues of propaganda that China uses to attack the United States now. And I don't really have a problem with anybody sharing their political views, but what I would ask is that your political views remain consistent. And so this story, I think, is going to blow a lot of your minds, and you're going to say, why am I not hearing and reading about this everywhere, given all the woke media out there? The reason is because they protect the NBA and they try to hide their insane hypocrisy from you. So the NBA has not said anything about China forever, right? They just avoid the entire subject ever since Daryl Morey, who at the time was the Houston Rockets general manager, ever since he supported democracy in Hong Kong. And by the way, after he supported democracy in Hong Kong, they ended up losing democracy in Hong Kong. So all those protesters not only deserved American support in Hong Kong, they also deserved the support of athletes, right? Well, the NBA has avoided mentioning anything about China. They shut up and dribble for Chairman Z, all of their top players. But this, I want to give credit right off the top here to Nike, because Nike came out recently and they said, we are not going to use cotton that is produced by slave laborers inside of Xinjiang province in China, where they are using Muslim slave laborers inside of concentration camps to produce cotton that is used by many different companies around the world, and certainly a lot of them in China. And Nike found out that its product was being made with slave labor cotton. Yes, slave labor cotton, even in 2021 in China. And they said, we are no longer going to allow our products to be made with Muslim slave labor in Xinjiang province in China. We will source our cotton elsewhere from free people. That got Nike criticized to the nth degree all over China, and people began to boycott Chinese people did, Nike products in the country. And two different Chinese sneaker companies, Li Ning and Anta, both came out and said, we are going to use Chinese slave labor in the Xinjiang province to make our shoes. I want you to listen to me carefully here. They said they were going to use slaves who pick cotton to make their product. They doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on slave labor when they found out that Nike was saying they wouldn't use it, and people in China cheered, and they've been buying more of their product. Well, this is interesting because those two Chinese sneaker companies are paying tens of millions of dollars a year to many so-called woke NBA stars. In particular, Dwayne Wade, who is now retired, has a monster deal with one of these Chinese companies. Not only does Dwayne Wade have a monster deal, he has signed on others to be a part of his monster deal. CJ McCollum and D'Angelo Russell in particular are now a part of Dwayne Wade's slave labor prospects. All right? Also, how about Klay Thompson? He has an $80 million deal with a Chinese sneaker company that is using slave labor to make his shoes. So does his Warrior teammate, James Wiseman. I don't know about you, but Golden State Warrior head coach Steve Kerr, who always lectures us about politics, I'd be interested to know what he thinks about his players making tens of millions of dollars, even though both of those guys are injured right now, off of Chinese slave labor. I would also like to know what Laker LeBron James thinks about his teammate Alex Caruso making tens of millions of dollars alongside of other NBA players off of this Chinese shoe. I would also like to know what NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who allowed his players to have social justice warrior slogans on their jerseys last year, and who also put political slogans on the basketball court itself, thinks about the crazy hypocrisy here that they now are allowing NBA players to play their games wearing sneakers that were made by slaves in China. Is there in any way a defense of the NBA players who claim to be woke and in reality are wearing the product that is created by Muslim slaves? Literally, there are still slaves in China producing cotton. This is not just something that happened in the 1860s in the South. This is something that is going on today in China. And if you are an NBA player that is trying to argue that you won't shut up and dribble, that you're about more than basketball, that you're about more than just being an athlete, how in the world can this league justify slave labor produced products on its basketball court? And this to me is emblematic of the horrible hypocrisy that exists in the NBA right now, where the NBA players, coaches, league executives will criticize American institutions to the high heavens, but they won't say a word about what's going on in China because they want to continue to cash all these Chinese checks. And all of these NBA players who claim that they are so woke, how in the world can they justify playing and working for Chinese companies that are using slave labor to pick the cotton that is in the products that they are endorsing? It is the height of hypocrisy. You know what also is the height of hypocrisy? That almost no one else in the entire American sports media is going to point this out to you at all. Almost no one, I bet, who covers the NBA is even going to be willing to ask any of these players, coaches, league officials, or the commissioner about this hypocrisy at all. In fact, the NBA has declined comment on whether it thinks it's appropriate that some of its star players are wearing slave labor products endorsed by China. Remember, this is not some unintentional act where you find out, oh, we didn't know our product was being made this way, and we're going to change now the way that we source it. These Chinese sneaker companies know that they are using slave labor, Muslim slave labor from Xinjiang province in China, the Uyghur population. This is genocide that's going on there, and they have doubled down. They are using it intentionally, and they are trying to punish Nike in China for not using it. This is a wild story. This should be a monster story given what the NBA tries to do in the United States of America. They are being used by China and Chinese propaganda, and they aren't doing anything to try and fight against it. It's downright unacceptable and disgraceful. And yet, I bet this is the only place in all of American sports media, this show and Outkick, the website, that will actually cover and discuss this in detail. Ask yourself why that is, and also ask yourself why so many people in American sports are carrying water for China, why they are willing to shut up and dribble for Chairman Z while ridiculing American institutions that are far more equitable, that are far more fair, that are far greater than all of the institutions in China. The NBA is doing China's bidding, and almost no one will even mention it in any way. It's disgraceful. All right, had to hop on my soapbox this morning and tee off on this hypocrisy. Up next, we're going to talk with Paul Kuharsky about the latest in the world of the NFL draft. All of that headed your direction next. But in the meantime, I want to let you know you can get right now up to and ready for the fight of a lifetime with Triller Fight Club. Famed YouTuber Jake Paul is taking on former Bellator and one championship champion Ben Askren. They're headlining a great night of fights from Atlanta, April 17th on pay-per-view. You'll also be part of an iconic music event, including Justin Bieber, Diplo, and Doja Cat, and get set for the debut of supergroup Mount Westmore featuring Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Too Short, and E40. You need to get in on the action. April 17th, 9 Eastern, only on pay-per-view. Order the fight now at TrillerFightClub.com. Up next, Paul Kuharsky. It's the NFL Draft. This is Outkick on Fox Sports Radio.